Betrayal is unmatched expectation. Betrayal is when an individual expects B because they are given A, and instead they get -2 in return. That equation does not compute, and this is where betrayal stems from. What you see is that there are a lot of things that happens in the life of different individuals that sometimes people may say, oh, this is a spiritual attack, or this is that, but oftentimes these are things that has a lot to do with people not understanding how to draw proper boundary. And let me tell you one thing. Listen, every interaction that people have with you, guess what you are doing? You are teaching them how to relate with you. All right. And the moment people understand how to relate with you, it is essentially difficult, if not impossible, to change the way they are going to relate with you in the future. Hello, everybody. My name is Ebenezer Gabriels, and today I want to talk to you about something very interesting that has been coming up quite frequently in our care practice, both in spiritual care and even in genealogy. Something very interesting is it emerging as a pattern in the life of many individuals, and it is something that actually transcends the realm of the soul, as the soulish realm, the body, the spirit, and individual well-being. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the subject of emotional wounds, especially in the area of genealogy. Something that has become very prevalent is the issue of wounds that is being carried on from generation to generation. Oftentimes, you see a generation suffer from the same issues that the previous generation had essentially suffered from, and oftentimes people don't realize, and they begin to talk about, oh, it is in our DNA. Yeah, DNA talks about your predisposition, but one thing that DNA does not essentially address is how did that thing that has been coded into that DNA, how did it even begin? Science has been able to open the factors that you can change what gets passed on to the next generation via habit. All right, so it is safe to say that the things that you actually see reoccurring in families, the patterns that you see, can actually be changed or be introduced. Now let me break this down. There are situations where you see perhaps the patriarch of a family, perhaps because it's a family that runs businesses, right? The patriarch of this household is constantly faced with different kind of pressure. He has to deal with multiple employees. He has to deal with suppliers and things like this, right? It is not uncommon for such a patriarch who has not taken time even to master how to essentially release even this high pressure, all right, to begin to face internal issues, things like high blood pressure, also things that is related even with high pressure environment. So if such a patriarch does not understand how to deal with this external pressure that is as a result of the business that they are running, it is highly likely that the way their body is going to process this thing will in the long run affect the health of that individual. And that is where you see situations, like liver failure, kidney failure, also not different things, that begins to crop up as a result of the inability to be able to, push away or to manage even that stress, properly. Another area, especially when we talk about wounds, and here I'm talking about emotional wounds. What you see is that there are a lot of things that happens in the life of different individuals. That sometimes people may say, "Oh, this is a spiritual attack," or "This is this, this is that." But oftentimes these are things that are that has a lot to do, with people not understanding how to draw proper boundary. And let me tell you one thing. Listen, every interaction that you have, has the ability to be physical interaction, obviously, all right, but it could also be spiritual, and as a result of that, that can also be chemical. Let me break it down. So when we talk about interaction that you have with someone, speaking to that person, being in close proximity with them, there is obviously how they make you feel. For example, you try to buy something from somebody, and they say, "Oh, this is good, this is that." The way before you get to the point where you make the decision to buy. All right, buying, for example, that item that you're buying, has a lot to do, with the chemical reaction that is going on within your body, and it has a lot to do with how they make you feel, or how the product makes you feel. So, it's a function of personal relationship, one-to-one conversation that you're having, and how it then triggers a chemical reaction in your body, and so knowing that. There's a lot of other interactions which obviously could go beyond buying and selling. Could be in a personal relationship, right? You have a friend coming to you, and you're going out for dinner or whatever, right? There are relationships that are essentially can trigger chemical reaction, and perhaps could be hurt, anger, happiness, and all sort of emotions, right? All these emotions essentially boils down to what are chemical, reactions even in your body. If you're feeling happy, right? Essentially, there's a chemical, reaction that is responsible for that, or the happiness that you feel from outside, or the result of the conversation that you're having, can then, process even to a certain chemical reaction, which then comes back as a feedback that oh, you're supposed to be happy. This is good, right? Because ordinarily, right, your brain may not be able to even process or say, oh, this is a good reaction, or this is a bad thing, right? Until the chemical reaction is complete, right? And that triggers a state within you, and then your brain begins to understand, oh, this is a happy event, or this is a sad event. And if that is a happy event, right? Obviously, the chemicals that are created in your body, can either help build your organs, can change the state of your organs, or it could be toxic for your organs. So the result of your physical interaction, goes deeper than physical interaction, right? It actually goes into your chemical interaction, right? It goes into the chemical process, which then can be beneficial or harmful even to the organs in your body. And this is the foundation for emotional wounds. Listen, when we talk about emotional wounds, right, these are, obviously, wounds that is essentially based on, interactions. And this is where everything gets interesting, right? Every interaction that you have that is not defined has the possibility, of turning to an emotional wound. And you may be asking, how does that happen? Well, every interaction that you have, if the proper boundaries or the rules of engagement are not set, all right, what happens? It leads to what they call unbalanced expectation. And especially where expectation management is missing, these can easily, spiral out of control. That is why you have to, manage every interaction. What is the purpose of this interaction? I'm going to speak to that person. I'm going to meet that person for lunch, for dinner, or for this. Whatever the purpose of your interaction is, if you cannot, define the rules of engagement, then there is a higher possibility that, there is what they call, expectation mismatch, right? And when that happens, right, there is the possibility of someone, getting hurt. And what does that look like? It goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Because your brain doesn't, understand, fundamentally, what, a good experience or a bad experience is, right? The chemical reaction that is generated, after that interaction, right, informs your brain that, well, this is a bad experience, or this is a good experience, and in turn, guess where that begins to manifest in your organs. All right, if bad chemicals is being produced in your body, guess who's the recipient? You are the recipient. All right, in your organs, in your liver, in your kidney, in all these different areas, and that is how toxins build up in the body. It is very important, and oftentimes this is an area that people overlook, and people underestimate how simple interaction can actually make or break a person. It is important. So the key point in here is that for every interaction that you're about to make, right, have the mental boundary, set expectation, make it very clear. And one of those areas that people get into trouble is especially in financial relationship, right? Any relationship that has to do with money that is not clearly defined, right? In fact, things can spiral out of control very, very easily. One other thing that I would like to add in right here is that listen, it's important to understand this. Every interaction that people have with you, guess what you are doing? You are teaching them how to relate with you. All right, and the moment people understand how to relate with you, it is essentially difficult, if not impossible, to change the way they are going to relate with you in the future. Have you ever heard of the term that there is no second chance to correct the first impression? Well, that is that. What I'm trying to say is that the more interaction people have with you, the more opportunity they have even to learn how to interact with you. And if you don't set even the record straight, if you don't set the boundaries earlier in your interaction, listen, everybody's learning everybody, right? There are yardsticks. Your mind is learning, your eyes, even your sense of smell, your skin. You're learning, your body is learning space, right? Your mind, your soul is learning. Your spirit is even learning. So if you do not set even the boundaries, around your interactions, people will learn that it's okay to go that far. It is okay to go in that direction. And if you're not careful, it is impossible for you to change what they've already learned about you. Why is that important? Well, it is important because of you, because of your body, because of the chemical processes that is happening in your body. It is important because if you don't set the boundary, if you don't get to the point where you understand what they call expectation management, then there is a major problem that you would have to deal with. And guess what? Nobody will deal with you but you. Because it would tell, especially on your body. It would tell on your skin. Okay? It would tell even on the way you carry yourself. And, oftentimes, the skin is like the final, alarm to tell you that something is going on in your body. There are individuals today who are having a breakout, they are having this, and they are thinking, oh, that looks like, some sort of spiritual attack, looks like this, right? But oftentimes there are signs that they have neglected in their own body. And I'm going to quickly, talk about this. There's something called, wounds that is as a result of betrayal. Listen, when you understand even the goal of betrayal, when you understand, what betrayal is, then you will understand that you need to guard your mind, your soul, your body, every time. Listen, see, the goal of betrayal, in fact, let me dial it back a little bit. When we talk about betrayal is a scenario or is a situation that happens because of lack of a better judgment. Betrayal is unmatched expectation. Betrayal is when an individual expects B because they are giving A, and instead they get -2 in return. That equation does not compute, and this is where betrayal stems from. Betrayal essentially I know I'm oversimplifying things, right? But hear me out. Betrayal in its most simplistic form, right, is unmatched expectation. That is just what it is. Oh, because I relate with you this way, and I expect you even to respond to me that way. Now you are not responding to me that way. You betrayed my trust. All right, I'm doing this for you. I'm giving this thing to you. I'm doing that for you. But in return, I'm expecting this much, and you are coming back with this. You betrayed my confidence. You betrayed my trust. All right. So betrayal essentially, like I said, in its most basic form, is mismatched expectation. I'm expecting you to go extra far. Oh, I've had a conversation with you, and I had that in confidence with you, hoping that you would, keep the integrity of our conversation. But now the conversation is leaked out, right? It's mismatched expectation. My expectation was that, after, speaking to you like that, you keep what I've said to you. But since you have not, held on even to your part of the bargain, then it essentially, constitutes a betrayal in my book. So betrayal is unmatched expectation. And how can you avoid betrayal? Listen, betrayal is one of the reasons why, many people, just, quit living life. Betrayal is not only physical; it goes beyond, the physical realm. In fact, betrayal, it goes even through the soulish realm. And guess what happens? Your body becomes the recipient of everything that you go through, even in the process of betrayal. Because when someone is betrayed, right, again, everything goes back to those, chemical processes, right? And the reaction is generated, and you're there for days thinking, how did that even happen? That person, that man, that woman is not supposed to do this to me. They said we are supposed to be exclusive. They are supposed to deliver, on their promise. But now they have not done any of that, right? That right there, right, is what betrayal looks like. And I want to encourage you. It's very important. Listen, how do you avoid that, right? Set, the proper boundary. You have to understand expectation management. And, obviously expectation management is another, deeper, topic that we can, obviously explore. But, very quickly, listen, oftentimes, certain expectations are not even communicated. Or you're going for a meeting, perhaps, it's a sales meeting, or perhaps you're looking for a life partner, right? It is important even to, communicate, your expectations, because expectation that is not communicated would essentially, lead to unmatched expectations, and betrayal is the result of that. So how does it affect your body? Well, like I said, your mind is the first recipient, right? Remember, your soul, lives in your head. Your soul lives in your mind, right? So your mind is the first recipient, right? And then when you begin to add, those, chemical imbalances in your body, your mind, begins, to work out of order, right? And guess what? Your soul is the first recipient, right? So the soul becomes wounded, and listen, your head, being the seat of your destiny, right, begins to, react, haphazardly, right? So your mind is the first recipient. Then obviously, your thought. When your mind is not right, your thought is not right, right? There's a lot of people today, especially in America, who are, having mental breakdown, mental disorder. Oh, this one has been diagnosed, with this or that, And I'm not saying they are not true, but a lot of these things can be traced back even to, lack of proper expectation management, lack of proper, boundaries, right? And you're expecting much, less was given to you. You're expecting less, much was given to you. Imbalance, and that can, easily, create a wound in your head, which goes into your soul. And when your soul is affected, your body, is going to tell. Your body, becomes, a recipient of all those, toxins. And that is obviously very dangerous for your health. And then we have your eyes, all right? There are people who, in their eyes can see, there's just, lack of balance. They cannot focus. There's a lot of things that's going on, with them. Obviously, when the brain is sick, the eyes will also be a recipient of that. And then finally, you have your skin. Your skin is the final alarm that is telling you something is not right chemically within you, all right? Something is not right. You can have a breakout. You can, rashes. You can have all sorts of different things, right? Because that's the final, alarm that your body is telling you something is not right. There are individuals who, they are one skin tone today, tomorrow they are the other skin tone. Essentially telling you that you are dealing with something that you're not taking, time even to fix. Your body is calling your attention even, to certain things in your body. And I want to encourage you, this is the time to listen. This is the time even to listen. It is important because, the organs in your body, you may not be able to see them, but your skin, which is the largest organ in your body, is telling you something. Say, look at what is going on, and it's time, you actually take that very seriously. And sometimes, this is where, things, get, really, really bad. Majority, especially those who are, are religious, all right? Those who are religious, they, it's very easy to attribute everything even to the power of a demon, to the power of a devil or something like this, right? But oftentimes, these are just the result of interactions whose boundary was not properly defined. The expectation was not, clearly defined. As a matter of fact, you see, pastors, another good example in the church, right? Or, pastors, or even just generally clergy, although it's more common with, pastors and priests, right? So oftentimes, the pastors are expected even to manage people, the same pastor, does, preaching, it does counseling, it does delivery, it does all this, also things, and sometimes they're not even is filled. They're not even things that are is skilled in, but is expected even to to babysit, even to counsel, to spend all this time, and oftentimes what then happens is that the people that he's counseling or the people he's spending time with, right, they do not see him that way. What has been ingrained in them is that anytime I just go to the church or to that gathering, right, my need is supposed to be met, spiritually, physically, emotionally, and all sort of things like this. But they never, for once think that these pastors, especially pastors, that these individuals are also human beings, that they are fallible, that they, and this is how the cycle of unmatched expectations. Majority of pastors, they spend 4 or 5 decades pastoring the same church, and all of a sudden they have been told even you've been so useful in the church, but it's time for you to now retire. And now and all of a sudden the pastor's thinking, what is my retirement plan? There's no retirement plan, and all of a sudden panic is setting in, and they don't even know how to do with it. Majority of them die unfulfilled, especially if they are being hired even by other pastors or by different ministry, right? And there is no solid or adequate plan for retirement. The majority of these pastors, they die sad. And for what? They've spent all their lives catering, providing all that they can provide, sometimes at the detriment of their own immediate families. And also there are other individuals who are in a relationship, right? You've been with that person for the past 3 years, it's supposed to be a courtship relationship, and you're there, and now you're bordering 4 years, 5 years, and there's no plan to get into marriage, and the woman is getting worried now because now she's just crossed 30 years old. She's thinking, is he gonna marry me? Is he not gonna marry? Oh yes, you enjoy each other's company, right? But there is an unmatched expectation. Now she's thinking about it, or perhaps he is there thinking, oh, well, I have to do this, I have to do that before before I get married. I have to have my life sorted out, and and if this is not clearly defined and discussed, right, it becomes a problem, right? One person says, I want to get married because obviously my body clock is in his, I'm getting older and things like this, so it's either you marry me now or I'm going to leave you. And the man is thinking, oh no, I'm thinking about having my career together. I'm thinking I cannot afford to, but oftentimes this can be resolved even where there's clear communication. But as a result of lack of communication, and sometimes it could be because of pride, arrogance. If I say this, what if and it's a lot of things. But like I said, all this can be resolved by clear communication. When there's clear communication, and clear boundaries, a clear understanding, a clear expectation, management, then everybody is fine. Right? There are people today who, just because they got out of a relationship, their life has been in a spiral. There are individuals, especially in the marriages, who are, and you sort of see that happen even to couples who have, gone through divorce. And what in there is that oftentimes when people go through divorce, right, especially for the man, it takes an average of at least 7 years before their life, can even, get back on track. That is, if they ever get back on track, because divorce is actually, something, very, very powerful and painful at the same time. It is something so detrimental, the chemical, processes, there's a lot of things that happen in there, and it's and oftentimes it's in stages, right? And that is why, like I mentioned, it's important, all right, to understand even your own chemical process, understand the boundary, set the boundaries very, very clearly, manage expectation. I know we've talked a lot about emotional wounds today, but I want to encourage you. This is very important. You'll be doing yourself a massive favor by paying attention to your interactions. All right. Let there be clear management of expectation. Manage those expectations, especially for yourself. Be clear about what you're looking for. And if you want to take it a step further, manage the expectation for the other person as well. Make it very clear. All right, make it very clear. Oh, so this is our expectation, so that everybody is on the same page. Because if you're not on the same page, there's a possibility of someone, getting really hurt. And if they get hurt, it goes, down into their soul, to their body, their organs become a recipient of that, and it becomes, a lose-lose scenario. All right, you don't want that happening. I hope you've been able to pick up one or two things, from our conversation today, and I'll talk to you soon.